So now I will take up the text of the essays on the Gita from this chapter. So now that we have an idea, maybe this para we can just almost read through and you will recapitulate what we have just said. But whence then come this conscious intelligence and conscious will which we perceive to be so large a part of our being, and which we commonly and instinctively refer not to the Prakriti but to the Purusha? According to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and not properties of the soul. They are the principle of buddhi, one of the 24 tattvas, the 24 cosmic principles. Prakriti in the evolution of the world bases herself with her three gunas in her as the original substance of things, unmanifest, inconscient, out of which are evolved successively 5 elemental conditions of energy or matter. For matter and force are the same in the Sankhya philosophy. These are called by the names of 5 concrete elements of ancient thought: ether, air, fire, water and earth. But it must be remembered that they are not elements in the modern scientific sense, but subtle conditions of material energy, and nowhere to be found in their purity in the gross material world. All objects are created by the combination of these 5 subtle conditions or elements. Again, each of these 5 is the base of one of 5 subtle properties of energy or matter: sound, touch, form, taste and smell, which constitute the way in which the mind sense perceives objects. Thus, by these 5 elements of matter, put forth from primary energy, and these 5 sense relations through which matter is known, is evolved what we call in modern language the objective aspect of cosmic existence. And I think more or less we have covered this in our explanation of the evolutes. But there is one question you must have noticed here, that whence then comes this conscious intelligence and will which you perceive to be so large a part of our being? According to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and are not properties of the soul. So we had discussed this en passant, that although we say that the soul is the Purusha, is the consciousness, then how is it that the matter, or how is it that we have leaves, we have trees, we have birds and animals, and as they themselves said, intelligence, ego, how do they get their consciousness? How are they becoming intelligent and conscious? Well, in the beginning, Sankhya would explain that they are conscious because of the buddhi, the principle of buddhi. As we have seen in the chart, the buddhi is the first principle that is manifest from Prakriti. And it is from this buddhi we have the ego sense, and then the manas, and then the other evolutes. So they say it is a buddhi which is reflecting in these elements, and this sense of the will and intelligence. Buddhi is this mental faculty of this intelligence. So you say we think that the tree is intelligent, or the animal is intelligent, or man is intelligent, because it is a quality of the same buddhi coming in. They are not yet answered the question, if you can see. You see, one is to say something is intelligent, and is another to say something is conscious. But the question is, how are they conscious? How is the human being conscious? Well, there they have said, well, it is not that they are conscious. Human being and Prakriti and Buddhi and animal, they are all reflecting the consciousness of Purusha. As I explained yesterday, the moon itself doesn't have the light doesn't have its own light. It only reflects the sunlight, but we think the moon is full of light and beautiful light and etc. So he says it is a kind of a misunderstanding. So even human beings and trees and birds and animals, they do not have consciousness, they are only reflecting. So like the moon is also a kind of a solid substance, but it can reflect. So similarly we are all solid concrete substances made out of these 5 elements, ether, fire, water, earth, etc. A different combination. And then we have all got a different combination of gunas, but we all reflect the Purusha. Now next para, he will describe a little more about Buddhi. 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of the cosmic energy. Well, if you remember, I had described these as the 10 objects, that is the Mahabhutas and Tanmatras. But now these are the 13 principles which we said as the subjective aspect. And what are they? Buddhi or Mahat, Ahankara, Manas, and its 10 sense functions. We have already numbered these 10 sense functions, out of which 5 of knowledge and 5 of action. Manas, mind, is the original sense which perceives all objects and reacts upon them. For it has at once an inferent and an efferent activity, receives by perception what the Gita calls the outward touches of things, Bhaya Sparsha, and so forms its idea of the world and exercises its reactions of active vitality. So we have here Manas, the mind. That's what I'm coming back to, this question of the mind. We are discussing about that. Is the original sense. So we said there are only 10 senses, but Manas is also taken to be the first sense, in fact, the original sense, which perceives all objects and reacts upon them. For it has at once an inferent and efferent activity, receives by perception, and so forms its idea of the world and exercises its reactions of active vitality. So that is where I said the yoga wants to control the mind, because the mind which receives the impressions and is the mind which reacts and responds. So the whole thing, the whole secret of our life lies in the mind, in the manas. But it specializes its most ordinary functions of reception by aid of the 5 perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste and smell, which make the 5 properties of things their respective objects, and specializes certain necessary vital functions of reaction by aid of the 5 active senses which operate for speech, locomotion, the seizing of things, ejection and generation. Buddhi, the discriminating principle, is at once intelligence and will. It is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. So you see the difference between mind and buddhi. Mind is a receiver of impressions. But it is buddhi that discriminates and is at once intelligence and will. It is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. You see, we may get a lot of impressions through our mind and into our mind through our hearing. You see, I'm hearing something, I'm hearing a noise behind, I'm seeing the trees here, I'm seeing all of you, I'm touching something. So there's a simultaneous input of data by all these 5 senses. But now this data could be confused. But there is no buddhi, the discriminating intelligence, which says, no, this sound is coming from behind, from the motor, from the polishing machine. This, because it recognizes, and it says, no, that man is not an outsider, is one of my own workers. So although there is an automatic input through my eyes of the man working there, the Buddhist says, no, don't worry, he is not an outsider. But the same thing, if there was an outsider, my eyes would see that a human being coming there, and the input would be somebody walking on the corridor, and the mind would say, hey, look, he's not your worker, he's somebody stranger, take care. So the data is being coordinated and discriminated by this buddhi agency. So that is why when we say, when somebody gets angry, somebody reacts and doesn't act logically, we'll say, hey, you lost your buddhi. Well, in India, in common parlance, we say, you lose your mind. But in our Sanskrit terminology, there's a difference between mind and buddhi. So buddhi is the higher faculty of discrimination. So when we say, we call the word buddhiman also. Somebody which is really having a little balance, a controlled wisdom, a coordination. So there's a higher faculty. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in buddhi by which the Purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti and her activities. But these subjective principles are themselves as mechanical as much a part of the inconscient energy as those which constitute her objective operations. This is the important thing, the criticism, that although we call that these are subjective, that is the buddhi and the ahankara and the mind, etc., they are not subjective at all, because they belong to manas, they belong to prakriti. So when they belong to prakriti, they cannot be having anything of the consciousness. So they also belong to that inconscient energy which is operative in the ether, water, air, etc. So ultimately all these 23 principles are only inconscient energy. Although we say buddhi means the discrimination, mind means this receptacle, but this is all a way of saying. But ultimately they are all inconscient. If we find it difficult to realize how intelligence and will can be properties of the mechanical inconscient and themselves mechanical, we have only to remember that modern science itself has been driven to the same conclusion. It's a very interesting point Aurobindo brings in here. Let me read one more sentence. Even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will, and in all the works of nature that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. You see, if we challenge Sankhya, that how is it that in this inconscient energy we see intelligence and will? He says, but what does your modern science say? They have also come to the same conclusion. They have gone to the levels of the atom and the subatomic level. And what do they discover? That there is a secret, hidden, unintelligible intelligence. We do not know what it is. But obviously there is a rhythm. The way that the subatomic movement is there, the neutrons and the protons and all that, they don't clash with each other. But the very fact of their movement gives out so much of energy. And then how does this nature act? The rhythms of nature, the seasons, the way the birds fly in the winter times across thousands of miles. There is this will, there is an intelligence. So we don't call it, the science also doesn't call it consciousness, but it calls it an intelligence. So science tells us that atom has intelligence, birds have intelligence, nature has intelligence. There is a power which apparently does not seem to be conscious, but there is definitely an intelligence. Otherwise we cannot explain the movements of the birds, of the movements of the animals, the movement, of the way an eagle really can swoop down on a little rat in a big forest. So there is some other faculty. We call it intelligence or will. So Aurobindo is asking that don't just challenge the Sankhya. Your science today, after thousands of years, has come to the same conclusion as Sankhya has come to, that in this jada there is intelligence. Now, the explanation that they have given may seem fallacy, but their observation is correct. And so too modern science tells us the same thing. What we call mental intelligence is precisely the same thing in its essence as that which discriminates and coordinates subconsciously in all the activities of the material universe and conscious mind itself. Science has tried to demonstrate is only a result and transcript of the mechanical action of the inconscient. But Sankhya explains what modern science leaves in obscurity. It's a great thing. You see, that is why, in spite of being so old, and as you said, one of the first Indian schools of thought, Aurobindo says here, it has explained what modern science leaves in obscurity. What does it explain? The process by which the mechanical and inconscient takes on the appearance of consciousness. So, can science tell us why and how there is this intelligence? You have accepted that in the subatom there is intelligence. You have accepted that in the movements of the sun there is intelligence. You have accepted in the movements of the ants, in the anthill there is intelligence. And nowadays, if you see in the National Geographic, as I said many a time, you will see a supreme intelligence in the animals. They may not be conscious of their intelligence, but they are supremely intelligent. So Sankhya gives us the answer, whereas science cannot. It just observes, but it doesn't know how and why. Sankhya says that this inconscient takes on the appearance of consciousness. It is because of the reflection of Prakriti in Purusha. The light of consciousness of the soul is attributed to the workings of the mechanical energy, and it is thus that the Purusha, observing nature as the witness and forgetting himself, is deluded with the idea generated in her that it is he who thinks, feels, wills, acts, while all the time the operation of thinking, feeling, willing and acting is conducted really by her and her three modes and not by himself at all. To get rid of this delusion is a first step towards the liberation of the soul from nature and her works. So let us take up the very interesting answer. There's an answer to modern science and an answer to our own yoga now. The reflection of Prakriti and Purusha, the light of consciousness of the soul is attributed to the workings of the mechanical energy. We have said this before, that it is the soul's consciousness which is reflecting on matter. And it is that reflection in matter which seems to be that that matter is conscious. Now, how far is this true? Does the soul's consciousness only reflect in matter? Well, the next line tells us, and we have seen this before in the synthesis of yoga too, that when we say the soul's consciousness reflects in matter, what does it mean? You see, even for this reflection there must be, the soul has identified itself with matter. And we have seen this, that's what happens. Yesterday also I was telling you, that in the beginning the soul thinks that I am the body. So when it is thinking I am the body, it is reflecting itself in the body. So the body seems to be my entire self, the most important thing, most beautiful thing, most, is the thing that I should care for. So this identification means giving out its itself into the body and thinking that I am the body. This identification is called reflecting itself in matter. And it is normal and natural that we are all thinking that the soul, that the body is my reality. But after a while, as we described in detail yesterday, we think, no, my body is only an instrument. My emotions, my ambition, my plans, my wanting to fulfill my desires, that is the truth of my existence. Body is there, okay, my teens are over, I was smart enough, I got a good girl, I got a good boy, body has attracted. So we don't have much of a importance for the body. But the second stage is my vital ambitions. They'll say, this is the most important thing. So this is what's happening. The soul is again identifying with your vital being. And then so you think that the vital being is important. So why did the vital being become important? Because of the soul's consciousness reflecting on the vital being. The vital being suddenly becomes focused upon, just wow, I am the reality. And you spend decades and years together observing, manifesting, fulfilling your vital. Then there comes a stage which says, no. The focus of the soul changes to the mind. And they say, oh my, all this emotion, this family business, this family ties, this money, this thing, this has no importance. My mental ideals, my religion, my ethics, my spirituality, my social work, we say that is important. Because the soul now thinks that it is the mind. So this way, what we have seen in sadhana explained in the synthesis of yoga is very close to what Sankhya has said. That is what is the beauty that I discover. That Sankhya, as I said, it has many problems, but at the same time, it has got this kind of some gems of truth which are found even in integral yoga, which are to be found in integral yoga. Then the last stage we said is the soul says, no, I am neither the body, nor the vital, nor the mental, I am the divine. Then suddenly it says, oh, all these days it was nature which was acting and seeing and feeling and willing and thinking, and I thought I was doing. So the soul turns back and says, I have been under an illusion. I thought I was the body, I thought I was this, I thought I was this. But actually those are the Prakriti. I am not Prakriti, I am the divine. And that is called realization. And that is why I use the word self-realization, realization of who oneself is. Realization of who I am. And that who I am is the divine. So this is the process of, distinguishing between Prakriti and Purusha. So what Aurobindo is writing here about Sankhya is a great basic truth. Now we come in the next paragraph to the first major problem of Sankhya philosophy. And there are two problems with Sankhya philosophy. One is the question of the multiple Purushas. We have already alluded to that. And other is the problem of liberation. There are two problems. First one, I don't have to read from the other book because Aurobindo himself gives the answer to the problem. There are certainly plenty of things in our existence which the Sankhya does not explain at all or does not explain satisfactorily. But if all we need is a rational explanation of the cosmic processes in their principles as a basis for the great object common to the ancient philosophies, the liberation of the soul from the obsession of cosmic nature, then the Sankhya explanation of the world and the Sankhya way of liberation seem as good and as effective as any other. What we do not see is at first is why it should bring in an element of pluralism into its dualism by affirming one Prakriti but many Purushas. We have said this also. That we have Purusha. There is only, we said Purusha and Prakriti. But the funny part here is that there are many Purushas and only one Prakriti. You see, he started saying, well, there is Purusha and Prakriti, and Purusha's Sannidhi Matra, just going close to Prakriti, Prakriti starts creation. But then when it comes to the question of liberation, then Sankhya feels a little uncomfortable. What is the problem here? Now this is very catchy problem here. He would say, it would seem that the existence of one Purusha and one Prakriti should be sufficient to account for the creation and the process and procession of the universe. But the Sankhya was bound to evolve pluralism by its rigidly analytical observation of the principles of things. First, actually, we find that there are many conscious beings in the world, and each regards the same world in his own way and has his independent experience of its subjective and objective things, his separate dealings with the same perceptive and reactive processes. If there were only one Purusha, there would not be this central independence and separativeness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. Well, we'll take up the problem, what Sri Aurobindo has given here. The problem arises this way, that you see, we are all different people here. And all of us look at the world in a different way. Each one has his own reaction to these different worlds and to this world. So what I say, for example, this hall is here. You have all come to Sakar. But each one of you has seen this place in a way peculiar to yourself. Some have a particular reaction, some have different reactions, some have appreciation, some have criticism, whatever. So if you have 40 of you, there have been 40 different views. That means what? That there is only one Prakriti, and there have been, say here the Prakriti we said is Sakar, for example. But the 40 of you have had different views and reactions. So what does it mean? That we have 40 different Purushas. Prakriti is one. Sakar is only one building here. But the 40 of you have got different views. So, Sankhya says, there must be 40 Purushas. I cannot say there are 40 Prakritis. I have offered you only one hall of here. I have not said there are 40 halls. I said only one hall. But in this one hall you have got 40 reactions. So obviously there must be more plurality of Purushas and a singularity of Prakriti. And a very logical one. We will see where the defect is, but as a view is right. And this is also important to see that if one of us does the yoga, goes to yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and dharana, dhyana and samadhi, so one person is off the grip of Prakriti. So Sankhya says, because there are 40 Purushas, so one person, if he wants to go into Samadhi, you can go. and be off the grip of the gunas and the prakriti. So they say if there is only one Purusha, that means if one person goes to Samadhi, all the 40 people in the hall will go to Samadhi. It's not possible. That means one person can escape this Prakriti. Does it mean all the people in the world become beyond Prakriti or escape Prakriti, or escape this bondage and ignorance? No. So they argue saying, no, we are right in saying that there are many Purushas. Because basically we have seen all the reactions, and then once one person leaves this world, not only by death, but even in the ultimate spiritual sense of liberation, then the next 39 people remain as they are. So they say, where is the mistake here? Where is the lacuna? So logically they say, no, we are right. So one Purusha, one Prakriti and many Purushas is the theory that they propound. Now this is their argument. Now let us see the counter argument. Now this is from the other author, not from Aurobindo. This is from, as I told you, Dr. C. Sharma. In fact, all the arguments advanced by Sankhya to prove the plurality of the Purana or the Purushas turn out to be arguments to prove the plurality of the Jivas, which none has ever denied. Sankhya proves the plurality of Purushas by such flimsy arguments that if there were only one Purusha, the birth or death or bondage or liberation or experience of pleasure or pain or indifference of one should lead to the same result in the case of all, forgetting its own doctrine that the Purusha is not subject to birth or death or bondage or liberation or any action. Realizing this great defect, the commentators like Gaudapada etc. have maintained the reality of one Purusha only. Now this is, I hope you understand. Let me read one more argument, then I'll explain. Then they say, if Sankhya can reduce all objects to one Prakriti, why can it not reduce all the empirical souls to one Purusha by the same logic? And why can Prakriti and empirical Purusha be not reduced to the absolute Purusha by the same logic? Again, if all the Purushas are essentially similar, if the essence of all is pure consciousness, how can there be really many? Differences and distinctions constitute individuality. If all the Purushas are essentially the same, there is no meaning in proclaiming their quantitative plurality. Numerical plurality is sheer nonsense. Well, of course, Aurobindo has another argument, but let's see the classical argument. First of all, they say that the Purusha is beyond birth or death or bondage or liberation. Here we said the basic argument is this question of, when I said he is off Prakriti, that means we meant the word liberation. That if one soul gets liberated from Prakriti, then all souls do not get liberated, so there are many Purushas. That was the argument. But then the classical argument is, can this Purusha get into bondage at all? By definition, no. Because what did we say? That the Purusha is only a witness aspect. It has no relation with Prakriti. It doesn't respond or react to its sorrow and pleasure and indifference, birth and death and liberation. So where is the question of one soul getting liberated when the soul is not even bound? So the first argument is that your question of the liberation of the soul is a fallacious one. Because you have yourself said soul has no reaction and response to nature. That is the classical argument, number one. And secondly, we said by a process of regress, going backward, we have reached into one Purusha, one Prakriti. So similarly, if all these 40 people we go by an infinite regress and we say, who is the source of your soul? What is the source of my soul? Okay, there's a universal soul. What is the source of the universal soul itself? There is a transcendent soul. So if you go for an infinite regress, there could be one Purusha only. So the classical argument is, why are you maintaining so many Purushas? If you are not maintaining, when we talk of Prakriti, I can also say many Prakritis. There are mountains, there are rivers, there are clouds, there are birds, there are animals, there are human beings, there are insects. I can say all this is one species of Prakriti. But you said no, all this is only one Prakriti. Isn't there a difference between a tree and a tree and a tree and an animal and a tree and a mountain and a river? Just like you are saying that there is a difference between all of us, the 40 people, there are differences in all the 40 tigers also. They are not one, there are 40 different tigers, like we have 40 different people. But you have clubbed all the 40 tigers plus all the 400 million animals, all the mountains and rivers into one. So the classical people say, what stops you and why should you stop in putting all these billions of individuals into one Purusha? So there also Sankhya has no answer. That is the second argument. This is the first one, and that is the second argument. And now we will take up what Aurobindo has to tell us. He says, if there were only one Purusha, there would not be this central independence and separativeness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. This is the argument of the Sankhya. Because Prakriti is one, all witness the same world. Because our principles are everywhere the same, the general principles which constitute internal and external experiences are the same for all. But the infinite difference of view and outlook and attitude, action and experience and escape from experience, a difference not of the natural operations which are the same, but of the witnessing consciousness, are utterly inexplicable except on the supposition that there is a multiplicity of witnesses, many Purushas. The separative ego sense, we may say, is a sufficient explanation. But the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary. For by itself it simply induces the Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti, and if there is only one Purusha, all beings would be one, joined and alike in their egoistic consciousness. However different in detail might be the mere forms and combinations of their natural parts, there would be no difference of soul outlook and soul experience. The variations of nature ought not to make all this central difference, this multiplicity of outlook, and from beginning to end this separateness of experience in one witness, one Purusha. Therefore, the pluralism of souls is a logical necessity to a pure Sankhya system divorced from the Vedantic elements of the ancient knowledge which first gave it birth. The cosmos and its process can be explained by the commerce of one Prakriti with one Purusha, but not the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos. Well, you have noted here that Aurobindo has not yet given his answer in this para, but has only reinforced the thought and the logic of Sankhya itself. Well, I think we have explained that in a different manner, that how if there is one Purusha, there would be only one reaction. Because if all of us have only one Purusha, then we would be looking at the world in a similar way, but which is not the case. And but what do we do in our integral yoga? How do we make this differentiation? We say there is only one soul, and yet we say we all have a different angle of looking at the world. What would be the answer from the angle of integral yoga? We say we have all got different egos. Each one of us is a definitely different ego system. It's because of our ego that we reflect differently the nature around us. When you all came in, you have all seen the same garden, in the same house, in the same hall, But because of your ego, the mental ego, the vital ego, whatever it is, you have seen this differently. That's what we would say. But then Sankhya would say, but that's not true. Because ego belongs to Prakriti. We have already said Ahankara. After the Buddhi, then there is Ahankar. So Buddhi and Ahankar and Manas, they belong to Prakriti. So he says, there is nothing to do with Purusha. So Sankhya says, no, integral yoga is wrong if you say because of ego, we are different. Sankhya says, I am also saying that we have all got different egos. But I am saying there are also different Purushas. So do you have any objection to that? Different egos, I agree, says Sankhya. Aurobindo says different egos, Sankhya says yes, different egos. But then how do you counter the argument when Sankhya says we have many Purushas? That's the argument which we are not yet, of course these classicists have given this argument of the liberation and this eternal recession. That's a logical answer, but still I do not think it is really satisfying us somewhere. There should be something else. That why there cannot be many Purushas, there is only one Purusha. Because if you say many egos belongs to Prakriti, so Sankhya says, I'm sorry, I will not accept Aurobindo's argument. So we are still hung there midway, we do not have the proper answer. But maybe one more paragraph will tell us the answer. And if it doesn't, then I will reveal something more. From Aurobindo, of course, there's no I there. I will reveal from him, that's the right way. There's another difficulty, quite as formidable. This is the one that we are speaking now about, the liberation. Liberation is the object set before itself by this philosophy as by others. Yeah, this is something again I've told you before also. I'll reiterate that somehow liberation has been the central aspiration of all our schools of thought. I mean, it's an extraordinary phenomenon if you can look back into a culture. 10,000 years back, people have thought of a spiritual liberation. Today the West with all its culture and everything still does not think of liberation, spiritual liberation. They think of the material liberation, thinking more wealth and more this thing and more that, but that does not liberate, that binds you more. But our culture, you see, it stood and died only on this one principle, that I want liberation. And for that seeking of liberation, it has found so many ways. That is also magnificent, that there is no one way of liberation. It is not the Christian way or the Islamic way or the Hindu way or the... There are dozens of ways. So all our Vedas spoke of that, Gita spoke of that, Upanishads speak of that, and even the schools of thought. Schools of thought were not interested in giving you PhD degrees and MA degrees. They said, I will teach you how to get yourself liberated. Somebody else said, I will teach you how to get liberated faster. And maybe it is that tendency that has come down today, somebody promising liberation in 1 week if you pay 25,000 rupees. It's the same tendency, faster the better, but today the better has become money, nothing more. But this we have had the tendency, everyone wants a quick shot at that. So these schools of thought developed, Buddhism, Vishishtadvaita, Yoga, Sankhya, everyone putting up boards saying, come to me, I'll give the shortest cut. So Sankhya also said that I will show you liberation. This liberation is effected, we have said, by the Purusha's withdrawal of his consent from the activities of Prakriti, which he conducts only for his pleasure. But in some, this is only a way of speaking. Very interesting. This says it's only a way of speaking. The withdrawal of the Purusha cannot be done. Why is it that the withdrawal of Purusha cannot be done? The answer is in the question itself. Because Purusha never consented to be part of Prakriti. So how can he withdraw? You see, if you say Purusha has consented to be part of Prakriti, identified himself with Prakriti, that means Purusha is a conscious, active, dynamic chap. But Sankhya says no. He has no dynamism, he has no activity, he just stands there as a witness, says yes once in a while and finish. So Aurobindo says the Purusha is passive. And the act of giving or withdrawing consent cannot really belong to it, but must be a movement in Prakriti itself. If we consider, we shall see that it is, so far as it is an operation, a movement of reversal or recoil in the principle of buddhi, the discriminative will. So now Aurobindo gives the answer to this question of liberation. The classicists, as I said, they said that how can the Purusha, if one Purusha is liberated, all other Purushas have also to be liberated. But Aurobindo gives a more logical answer. First of all, Purusha cannot be liberated because Purusha never got bound. Question 1. Then what gets liberated? It is in nature itself that the buddhi itself, which had really identified itself out of desire, out of attachment, thinking that this building is mine, this people is mine, this sense of identification, slowly through meditation, through dhyana and dharana and pratyahara and all that 8 steps of Raja Yoga, you have come back into your original self and you said, no, all the 10 matras, or all the sense organs, or the 5 organs of knowledge, they are not me. So you see, it's a beautiful process. Out of those 23 organs, or 22 now, you are coming back into that original buddhi. Because now our buddhi has percolated itself into the matras, into the tanbhutas, tanmatras and mahabhutas and all that. By meditation, as we said, you are getting away from the objective world. And from that objective world, you come into the manas, you come into the ahankara, you come into the buddhi. Then that is proper liberation. So he says it is the discriminative buddhi that makes it the liberation. Buddhi has been lending itself to the perceptions of the mind sense. It has been busy discriminating and coordinating the operations of the cosmic energy, and by the aid of the ego sense identifying the witness with her works of thought, sense and action. It arrives by the process of discriminating things at the acid and dissolvent realization that this identity is a delusion. That's what I explained just now. That by this sense of the withdrawal through the practice of meditation, it comes ultimately to realize all this was a delusion. I shouldn't have really myself identified with that. So it's the kind of an regress, getting back into itself. It discriminates finally the Purusha from Prakriti and perceives that all is mere disturbance of the equilibrium of the gunas. The buddhi, at once intelligence and will, recoils from the falsehood which it has been supporting, and the Purusha ceasing to be bound, no longer associates himself with the interest of the mind in the cosmic play. This is a combination, I must say, of Sankhya and integral yoga. Sankhya yoga and integral yoga. That's why I said in the beginning, Aurobindo accepts this portion of Sankhya yoga, which is to discriminate between the Purusha and the Prakriti. That this separation is a must. Without this separation within, you cannot get into the contact of your psychic being even. So this is one principle that he took up fully. So here, but the principle of detachment, how does it come? By the Raja Yoga method of the separation in the meditation. So he says, in the meditation, it is the buddhi which recoils from the falsehood which it has been supporting. So if you say, this world, this object, this people, this ugliness of the world, if you start saying, no, I do not like it, this is not me. But when can you do that? If you come to the office and if you suddenly says, no, I'm not doing this work, this is an ugly job, you can't run the office. You've got to be pragmatic. So they say during the practice of meditation, you can achieve this sense of withdrawal and separate yourself. Because in meditation you're not supposed to be giving orders and anything commands to your subordinates. You're left to yourself. That is why the need of meditation, where you can separate yourself. So he says, it withdraws and then no longer associates himself. So you see, and you have seen Buddhi and Prakriti and Purusha. So Buddhi is the first one, the closest to Prakriti, closest to Purusha. So once this withdrawal comes to the level of Purusha, that is when the soul suddenly says, I'm not this body, mind and life. I am the divine. As I said, the last level of self-realization comes simultaneously when all this world withdraws into the buddhi. Otherwise, how do you think the soul says, I am the divine? It cannot say. Until the Prakriti really detaches itself, the soul cannot say, I am the divine. Because we have spent maybe 50 years, 60 years of our life thinking that I am the body, I am the emotion, I am the mind. We are so identified with this Prakriti. Overnight you cannot say that I am divine. But that sentence will come in our life only when we have practiced through life, through meditation, through this process, and ultimately achieved a level where my buddhi says, no, I have had a mistake, I have done a mistake. So when it says I have done a mistake of identifying with the entire 22 principles of evolutes, at that kshan, at that moment, the soul can say, oh my God, I am not this Prakriti. I am me, the divine. So you see friends, what our yoga has taught is again a self-realization through very, very practical methods. We think, oh, this yoga is an ancient thing and we have taken to a new yoga, integral yoga. You see, we also fancy a lot because Aurobindo has given us integral yoga, we have a tendency to, kick away all these old yogas. But there's so much of the old yogas which has been brought into the practice of integral yoga itself. That's why it's important to know, you see, why Aurobindo is giving, even in the synthesis of yoga, you have seen there are separate chapters on Raja Yoga and Hatha Yoga and Triple Path and all that. Because they have contributed much to integral yoga, path of integral yoga, not only philosophy. So we cannot deny the fact. So let's not be prejudiced for the old yogas all the time. We say, oh, those are the old yogas and this is Aurobindo's new yoga and integral yoga. You do neither of them, is bad. So Aurobindo is telling that is a point of self-realization. The ultimate result will be that Prakriti will lose her power to reflect herself in the Purusha. For the effect of the ego sense is destroyed and the intelligent will, becoming indifferent, ceases to be the means of her sanction. necessarily then our gunas must fall into a state of equilibrium. The cosmic play must cease. The Purusha return to his immobile repose. But if there were only the one Purusha, and this recoil of the discriminating principle from its delusions took place, all cosmos would cease. As it is, we see that nothing of the kind happens. A few beings among innumerable millions attain to liberation or move towards it. The rest are in no way affected, nor is cosmic nature in her play with them one whit inconvenienced by this summary rejection, which should be the end of all her processes. Only by the theory of many independent Purushas can this fact be explained. The only at all logical explanation from the point of view of Vedantic monism is that of the Mayavada. But there the whole thing becomes a dream. Both bondage and liberation are circumstances of the unreality, the empirical blunderings of Maya. In reality, there is none freed, none bound. The more realistic Sankhya view of things does not admit this phantasmagoric idea of existence, and therefore cannot adopt this solution. Here too we see that the multiplicity of souls is an inevitable conclusion from the data of the Sankhya analysis of existence. So you see, Sankhya analysis, until we get to the true answer, is unanswerable. You cannot really throw it away and saying it is not big philosophy. Even Sri Aurobindo is pointing out time and again that this question of the ultimate detachment, ultimate liberation, going beyond the ego, all this can happen because we have many Purushas. Because if there's only one Purusha in the world and that Purusha withdraws from the world, then the world would collapse. That means what? The Purusha has said no, has withdrawn his consent to Prakriti, Prakriti would collapse. But he said that's not the case. There are so many Buddhas have come and Mahaviras have come and Christ have come and Krishnas have come. All these people have come and gone and had their own withdrawals from ignorance, but the world is continuing. So many yogis and saints have attained liberation, but the world has not changed a wee bit, is not even affected, it doesn't even bother. He says, okay, 10 yogis have gone liberation, fine, let them go, but I go my own way. So, obviously he says, the argument of the Sankhyas is irrefutable. But is that so? Vedanta says no. There is an answer. There is a counter answer to Sankhya. And what is that answer? A very simple one, I suppose. The simple answer that Vedanta says, which all of us know, is Mayavada. So, none bound and then none released. Because all this world is an illusion. So, why argue about who is this Prakriti and who is this and all that? So Vedanta says, Advaita Vedanta, that this world is a Maya, there is nobody bound, no soul, no Purusha, only Brahman is the truth. But then obviously, Sankhya doesn't take that. And Sankhya has come after some of these things have been said. Of course, it comes much before Shankara. But still, some of this thought which occurs in the Upanishad, it rejects. It says, no, world is not an illusion. It is a reality because we feel, because they have said Prakriti and Purusha are two ultimate principles. If you say world is an illusion, that means Prakriti is an illusion. Prakriti is non-reality, and they say it's not possible. So if Prakriti is the reality, then the world is the reality. And if the world is the reality, liberation is the reality. So they say, this Advaita Vedanta, sorry, we don't accept. But then what? Do we accept the question of the Purushas? That there is a multiplicity of Purusha. This is something I think we have to really think deep. That is there any logical answer in Sri Aurobindo or not? Well, Gita has given some other answer. Maybe before we come to Sri Aurobindo's answer, we will see what the Gita has to say. Because I would really like some of you to think what could be Sri Aurobindo's answer to refute Sankhya. You have done Life Divine, Book 1, Book 2, Part 1, Part 2, 17 chapters, and we have only last 8 chapters to go. But could you find some logical answer to refute Sankhya's theory of multiple Purushas? I'll wait for your answer till tomorrow. We'll leave at the present. Because I don't want to really spoon feed you and say, this is what Sri Aurobindo has said. Now I think you are MPhil degree, if not the PhD. Across your BA, MA and MPhil. And I suppose you are strong enough to come out with an answer. So let's think over this problem and we'll see tomorrow. And tomorrow first I'll read out the Gita, then I'll see what Sri Aurobindo has said, what you have said, not what I will say. Right? So I'll leave it for that. I'll not like to give it right now.